Lucky to Be Here is a podcast that showcases the lives and experiences of those who took the leap to build their lives and careers across countries. They share their stories, lessons, and advice to show us what is possible and what it takes to be an international student and professional. Because there is a lot that goes into building your own path one day at a time. We're more than just lucky to be here. I'm your host, Dr. Analia Gomez Vidal, and I know what it takes because I have been there myself. Now, I coach and mentor international graduate students and professionals navigating life and career transitions across industries and countries through my company, AGB Services LLC. To learn more about how I can help you move from doubt and overwhelm to taking action with clarity and confidence, visit agbservicesllc.com. Stay until the end of the episode for a special treat too. Welcome to Lucky to Be Here. I am really glad you are. I am very excited to welcome today Sebastián Vallejo Vera. Dr. Sebastián Vallejo Vera is assistant professor at the Department of Political Science at the University of Western Ontario, where he studies gendered and racialized barriers to political spaces. He's also a dear friend and collaborator that I have had the pleasure of being classmates and working with for many years now since graduating from University of Maryland, College Park. Bienvenido, Sebastián.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. And so, as already established, we've known each other for many, many years now, over a decade. But to anybody listening who has not met you yet, what is your story? Whatever that means to you.
Well, that's a great question. So I guess that my story is similar to many of the stories of graduate students that come to study in the United States or that went to study in the United States. Um, Similar. I don't know if it's the same. I left Ecuador, so I'm originally from Ecuador. I left with my family, or we left together. I got a Fulbright scholarship to study um, elections and campaign management in New York at Fordham University. We were there for a year, and my partner told me, "You did not make us leave the country for 1 year, upend everything, so might as well stay here for some other excuse." So while I was doing my master's degree, I had an amazing professor, um, Professor Monica McDermott, who gave us stats. And I went to her office one day and she was working on some project and she told me, "Hey, I need a research assistant to, tabulate some data. And would you be interested in doing this?" I said, yes, of course. I didn't really know what I was getting into. So I started helping her out with that. Eventually, this was a survey experiment. I helped out with the lit review. I helped out, processing the data. Again, I was just following, whatever she told me to do. But I loved it. Like I really fell in love with it. And she suggested that I apply for grad school to continue my studies in a PhD program. I already had thought about it, but she sort of gave me the last sort of shove that I needed to do this. And also I had her, her support. So that meant, some letters of recommendation. She pointed out what I should be doing. She really helped me out, like, to understand the process a little bit better. I applied, to as many schools as my shallow pockets allowed for me to apply. I got accepted into a couple of programs. One of them was at the University of Maryland. My dad did his master's degree at the University of Maryland, so there was like some encouragement for me to go there. And I did. I accepted it. Accepted the offer. We moved from New York to Maryland. We were there for 5 years while I was doing my PhD. It was a great time. It was a tough time. Like, poverty is tough. So we were there for 5 years. I finished. I graduated. I was able to get a postdoctoral fellowship at the University of Houston, like a couple of months before graduating, which was great. We moved then from Maryland to Texas. We were there for 2 years. It coincided with the pandemic, which was great because I had a job for two years. Well, many people probably didn't. It also meant that I had to going to one of the worst job markets in the history of political science. And that's saying much since the market is horrible always. But I was hired at the Tec de Monterrey in Mexico. I moved to Mexico. Again, this is with my family, with my wife, who has her own career, and she's been following me around despite that. And my two kids, now the oldest one is 16, the youngest one is 14. So, keep that in mind as I tell this story. Uh, we were in Mexico for 2 years. I loved Mexico. We were in Mexico City. I loved Mexico City. Everybody really liked Mexico City. It was like a Spanish immersive experience for my kids
Mhm.
who, like, they speak Spanish. Most people say fluently, but those of us who speak Spanish know that they speak like with the Netflix accent. So they we were there for 2 years, and I went into the job market one last time, not because I was not happy there, but because Mexico is a complicated place for women. And Mexico is a complicated place, like any other place in Latin America. It's not the safest place in the world. It is unstable in many aspects, even though it's a great place to be and the people are amazing. And I had a very successful job market experience the second time around. I got a couple of offers, and I was able to decide, which I think it's a privilege now, whether we wanted to stay in Mexico or
Mhm.
move to England or move to Canada. Eventually, together with my wife and my kids, we decided to come to Canada, and we also said that this was going to be it for the next couple of years at least. So we moved to Canada, and we've been here for 2 years, um, and we love it. We really like it. Canada, given the state of the world, is certainly a great place to be. The privileges of being a professor here in Canada are, you know, second to none. We are very happy. I don't know if we're going to be buried here in Canada, but we're definitely going to be here for a couple more years. Um, and yeah, that's sort of my story. This is how I got to the place where I am now. A lot of moving. Never buying furniture that is too heavy or too expensive, because you know that eventually you're going to have to take it someplace else.
That is a very key practical advice that I appreciate early on, as you're sharing your journey. Um, Let me ask you, when it comes to the beginning of it. So you mentioned that you initially moved to New York with a Fulbright scholarship to get started there. What prompted you to take that leap?
So, here's the thing, and this is something that um, hopefully we'll talk about a little bit more.
Mhm.
But like the class privileges, I'll put it that way, the class privileges from where we
Mhm.
come from, I think translate or travel very well to other places. So I applied to a Fulbright
Mhm.
scholarship because my dad was a Fulbright scholar, right? And I it was it was sort of like the natural thing to do, right? Hey,
Mhm.
you want to go study abroad? I got a Fulbright scholarship. Why don't you apply to a Fulbright scholarship? I applied to a Fulbright scholarship as like a known path for us to uh, try to see what was out there. Like it
Mhm.
was a low risk, low investment type of move. At the end of the day, Fulbright
Mhm.
scholarships, they're not the most generous in the world, but they cover pretty much everything.
Mhm.
So yeah, no, it was great.
I appreciate you saying that because, as someone who had a short-term Fulbright scholarship and then also worked at Fulbright, um, in my case, I had no idea about any of that until I kind of like went digging about exchange programs. I wanted to travel for education and kind of like learn through that process, and I had no idea about it. So luckily I had Google at the time, and that's how I got started. But yeah, I think that it is important for us to kind of like make a pause here to highlight this element of it, that there is so much that goes, and it's a little bit of the spirit of the podcast, right? It's not just luck that gets us here. It's a lot of different factors, one of which is the information and the resources available for us. So I'm also curious about thinking about this type of decisions from the lens of someone who's doing it for their own career advancement while also in the context of a family. So, what do you feel was the biggest challenge when you were in that headspace of, okay, I know that applying for the Fulbright scholarship is the next step moving forward, but I'm also coming in with my wife and my kids.
Right. So it definitely has to be, I think, like a family decision. It cannot be like, oh, I want to go and I'll just take everybody with me. Because it needs to be a commitment from everybody to know what you're getting yourself into, even if you cannot predict really what's going to happen in the next year or 2 years, in our case, in the
Mhm,
next 12 years now. I mean,
yeah.
we left the country 2 years ago. It has to be like a family commitment and a family decision. When so you probably know this, but when they give you sort of like all of the preparation seminars and talks when
Hmm.
you get a Fulbright, one of the things that they say is that most of the marriages fail once once they get a Fulbright,
Hmm.
and you have one of usually the Fulbright recipient is studying full time. They are rarely at home. The other person, stays there. There's like a whole bunch of issues. I'm not saying that it was easy,
Hmm.
uh, but I'm not saying it was like particularly tough on my marriage. But I guess that's because we both knew what we were going there for, and because we love each other very much. No, but because we knew what we were going there for. So in terms of family, so you have to understand. I mean, it is at least knowing that there's going to be a lot of sacrifices. That's one
Hmm.
thing. The other thing is that we did have that, like, the support of our families
Hmm.
back home, and I think that is fundamental in terms of saying, I think that we, like, both my partner and I, we worked really hard. We uh you know sacrificed a lot, but I don't think that we did anything that other people in our same situation haven't done. Just
Hmm.
saying that we did that, but we did have a wide safety net that allowed us to do that, right? So uh we were never, like, we were very frugal. We were, we saved a lot. We didn't splurge, but at the same time we never really had to worry about, will we be able to, make rent this month,
Hmm.
right? Uh, if Because in the back of our minds, we always knew we had the support of our family back in Ecuador, and I think that's sort of like key when it comes to making these type of decisions, or not even when making these type of decisions, but just being able to carry out to fulfillment
Yeah.
whatever you set out to do in terms of graduate education. At the
Hmm.
end of the day, you do sacrifice a lot. Uh, Among the many things you sacrifice is salary, right? So
Hmm.
I we for 5 years we earned poverty wages. I think that's one way to put them. And while the like we could be just home and earning whatever people our age that graduated with us from university or something are making in their
Hmm.
own non-academic jobs. So I think, yeah, that's important.
And one thing that I find very interesting about that conversation, it's, I think also the reference points are very interesting because they are very, like, they vary, right? And so on one hand, I absolutely agree with you that, the salary trajectory can be very different depending on what you pick. And at the same time, I do remember when I was first getting started and not fully comprehending the how low the pay was, because I was not taking into I was kind of like thinking about it from a reference point of where I'm coming from, right? Like, what would I be making if I were still in Argentina at that point in time? And so, like, then the conversion to dollar was like, oh, okay, I'm comfortable. And then you start paying bills, and it's like, take a minute here.
Yeah.
um And so one of those elements that I think that are very important and connected to this discussion also is, the breaking down what it is that you receive as stipend and, like the benefits as an international student. And I think like this is an important moment to kind of like mention that, because like as an international student, you don't just like pay for your taxes when you are in the US, but you also pay for some of the you have, like, you don't pay tuition, but you do pay for fees, and you have an extra fee in most cases as an international student. So it's not as straightforward as we might think about when we first get that letter.
Right. There's a lot of like, I'm not even going to say hidden costs because it's not that they're hidden. It's just that because most of the people who are giving out these offers are not international students
Mhm.
and have a very mm, casual relationship with international students in terms of like they come here, right? So sometimes we have people who speak funny and they come to our university. They don't really understand how the process works. They don't really understand what goes into it, because it's that, right? So first is, the visas themselves, right? So you have
Mhm.
to take into account that they don't last forever. You have to renew them every so often. Sometimes you have to renew them just because you have to get a new passport, or they gave you the first visa for 1 year and then you want to leave the country and then you want to come back and then you have to take out another visa. The process is not complicated like, that I mean, at least when I was applying, you knew that they were going to renew it. Now there's an additional, you know, barrier or
Uncertainty.
burden, uncertainty, right? But like at least when we were doing it, yeah, so
Mhm.
that it was going to, but you still had to pay. Like, say,
Yeah.
it's not free. And then you have insurance, sort of requirements that U.S. citizens obviously do not have, and those are costly. And like in the great scheme of things, yes, they're not the most costly things, but again, our salary was not very high, so you have to take those things into account. Now, one of the so it was a good thing, a bad thing. At the end, it ended up being a good thing, but because and the different types of visas that you can actually go and study with, and you become sort of a bit of like an expert on immigration law when you do this. So instead of having an F1 visa like the
Mhm.
one that you had, we had J1 visa that's for scholars that
Mhm.
you usually get doing a Fulbright. So when I went from being a J1 as a Fulbright scholar to studying at Maryland, they just extended that visa, and that
Mhm.
it was great in the sense that they automatically gave my wife a J2 visa, which allowed her to have a working permit
Mhm.
as soon as she arrived to the United States. So she was able to work. Otherwise, we couldn't afford,
Yeah.
to live because there was four of us, and she pretty much was the main provider of the house for
Mhm.
4 or 5 years while we were there. And that was great. Now it has other complications. So with a J2, with a J1 visa, you cannot apply for a resident type
Mhm.
visa or a working visa afterwards. You have to go back to the country, and there's like a 2 year requirement. But we didn't really want to do that, so our market was not very wide in
Mhm.
terms of like where to apply. There are ways that you can stay with a J1 if it's complicated. Well, you know this, and probably the people who have been in the States and know about visas know that this is complicated. But for anybody who's hearing this, these are things that you need to consider down the
Mhm.
line. Now, I didn't, but also like given the uncertainty of our career paths, between accepting a Fulbright in 2013 and thinking about the job market in 2021,
Mhm.
and where could I possibly apply to, I'd rather just accept a Fulbright in 2013, which is certain, rather than like maybe yes, maybe no. I'll
Yeah.
be like in a position that I have to think, oh no, now I cannot accept a position in the United States or something like that.
Yeah. And I think it definitely is an important aspect to keep in mind. Two things that you mentioned that most people do not necessarily know. The good thing about the J1 for when you have what it's called usually dependents is that you can have a J2 that also has a work permit, like you mentioned. But in cases where it's sponsored by governments, and for example, like for Fulbright, then you have the 2 year requirement, which I also had for a 1 month stay in the U.S. And so then knowing that, even though I then had an F1 for my, for grad school when we started at Maryland, that was a factor to keep in mind, that the opportunities ahead would look very differently depending on whether I had already accumulated the 2 years or not. And that absolutely shapes decisions as well.
Yeah.
Which also leads me to my next question, which is, if we look at your trajectory on paper, you followed like what we would consider a pretty traditional career path in terms of academic career. But when we look at it in terms of like locations, you've crossed the entire North America region. And I'm very curious to hear from your perspective, how has that that combination of experiences shaped your understanding of academia as an industry?
So I want to contextualize what I'm going to say
Mm-hmm.
by affirming that I have probably the best job in the planet.
Mm-hmm.
I work, like, I have to go to the office. And I know this is a primarily audio medium, so I'm doing air quotes. I have to go to the office uh, once a week
Mm-hmm.
for 2 hours. That's how much I teach. And I only teach 24 weeks a year, and I get paid for a full year. So my hourly wage is like $3 million. I don't know, right? So if you break it down, I get to do like research for a living, like something that I love. Like I get to read and write and advance the frontier of knowledge. uh, 1 millimeter at a time, that's fine. But you get to meet new people. You get paid to travel.
To
I get
collaborate with people
to collaborate
like
with
me.
people. You're encouraged to collaborate with wonderful people like Analia. You get to meet people from all over the world. I get, you know, paid leaves for just being, a year of sabbatical, half a year of sabbatical. Particularly here in Canada, job security is through the roof. Like I know that I'm not going to. I mean, as long as I'm not a criminal, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to get fired. I have a job. I have pretty much a job for life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, having said that, right? So I cannot complain, right? So
Yeah.
I do my own hours. I work whenever I want. I haven't missed my kids' school performances from the very first one in kindergarten to the very last ones now. I haven't missed one, I think, right? I have no excuse because I'm always available.
Yeah.
That's amazing. You tell me tomorrow, hey, you want to travel? Yes, I go. Okay. Having said all that,
Mm-hmm.
love my job, blah, 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 and the pay is amazing. Okay. Academia as an industry is that. So it's become that, like an industry, right? So
Mm-hmm.
academia should not be an industry. So we should. It's an institution that, in my mind, should. It's an institution that produces a public good, which is knowledge and community and networks and understanding of reality and the world. For the betterment of the people that are around us, for future generations, for everybody. Now, it has become like, yeah, like an industry where like you are working constantly, competing constantly with everybody to be able to get one of the few positions that are available now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is that a solvable issue? I don't know. If I had the solution, I probably wouldn't, you know, uh, be like an assistant professor. But it's an industry that requires you to be very mobile,
Mm-hmm.
very flexible, which it's easy when um, when you are. It's
Mm-hmm.
easy when you have that,
Yeah.
you have the ability to move from one place to another, that where you don't really mind, or you have few attachments to where you are. Um, it does require a lot of luck and sort of trying to know where the pulse of what's innovative and what is sexy at the time is, and just happen to coincide with what you are also doing, which was sort of my case, or
Mm-hmm.
what is sort of my case right now. Um, so, so it's an industry that when you come from I'm going to say a working class university like the University of Maryland, where we
Mm-hmm.
both went, you have there needs to be a lot of luck. You have to have, you know luck in the sense of, you had like a good advisor who's
Mm-hmm.
willing to connect with people. um you are working on something that is in high demand, and you are mobile,
Yeah.
and the places where you're willing to move are offering you jobs,
Mm-hmm.
right? So in that sense, it limits who becomes successful
Yeah.
in not because of lack of effort, of intellect, or lack of like how interesting is your research, or how
Mm-hmm.
much you are contributing to society, or contributing to your peers, or contributing to your community or networks, but rather like who you know,
Yeah.
and how well you are able to navigate this, so sort of these institutions. Sometimes it's because you have, so I knew a little bit about academia, how to navigate it, because my dad, my parents, like, so they are both, like, my mom's a doctor, my dad has a PhD, so they sort of knew what academia
Mm-hmm.
was like, and I
Yeah.
had a pretty decent idea of how it worked. Not obviously how it works now, but at least I knew, like, a little bit of, the
Mm-hmm.
environment. um I We have a family that, so we don't mind moving from one place to another,
Mm-hmm.
so that's a thing. um and But also, you know um we had the support from our family, all of these things that are not reflective of my work as a
Yeah.
scholar. I don't, it's not that I don't think I'm a good scholar. I'm just saying that there's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of good scholars. Like,
Yeah.
within the distribution of good scholars, I'm probably pretty average. Just happen to be very lucky in, or yes, come from these, have the characteristics of somebody who is able to move a lot. And not
Yeah.
everybody wants to move a lot. Not everybody has those resources. And we don't have, like, our responsibilities were limited to to our small
Mm-hmm.
family circle. I guess that helped. So if you're going to academia, if you're going into academia, or if you're in academia already, if you go into a mindset where, like, I'm mobile, like, I'm willing to go anywhere,
Mm-hmm.
then yes, that's going to, like, help you a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes that's not a decision that you can make.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like, we were lucky that, like, we were able to make that. It was a choice, right? So we are
Yeah.
mobile, we want to be mobile, we don't mind. I don't think that's true for everybody.
So I do want to push back slightly on a couple of
Yep.
things that you mentioned, but before you do that, like I do that, I do want to ask you, to what extent do you feel that that perception is consistent across the three countries that you've been in as an international student and professional so far?
So I think okay, that's an excellent question. So I think I was mostly referring to the United States.
Mm-hmm.
The Mexican market is completely different. I think that coming from the United States with a degree from the United States, the Mexican market, uh, for good or for bad, um, is more into, like, what degrees you bring with you, like, where
Mm-hmm.
did you study, rather than what you're doing. They're more about the names.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was, like, that was great for me. The Canadian market is a more hermetic
Mm-hmm.
market. They hire a lot within Canada.
Mm-hmm.
But I just happened to find a department that was looking for people from outside, trying to do things that are not usually done in Canada.
Yeah.
Um, and that was, I was able to bring. And it's a department that's still doing that. But we are one of the few departments that actually is trying to do it.
Yeah.
So again, luck, timing, right?
Mhm.
But also the flexibility that we had to say, yeah, well, hey, Canada, it's an option. Let's go to Canada. Why not?
And I think this might be a good moment to do a very short side note to leave on the record the fact that Sebastian and I have a pretty successful paper published in a JOP, in Journal of Politics, and as part of a research agenda that we've been developing over the years. Um, and he's done a lot of the work, most of the work in many cases. I just want to put it out there because I am not in the academic circles as often. Then I'm a little bit of a that opens up to speculation about the division of labor, and I do want to make it explicit that Sebastian is the one leading us and has been tremendously generous as a collaborator in our academic partnership. That said, I do want to push back in a couple of things that you mentioned, and in particular with this idea of that academia is becoming an industry but should not necessarily be an industry. And here's where I'm coming from with this. I agree with you that what we produce as part of the academic environment is a public good, and we seek to do that. It's an offering to society as a whole, and to provide the knowledge and the information that can help us move forward across the board. That said, I think that most often than not, a lot of that discourse has led to a lot of invisible labor that then opens up opportunities for a lot of harmful and exploitative structures. And one thing in particular that I noticed that you were sharing, that I can completely agree with you in the sentiment behind this, is, like you were uh, calculating your cost per, like your wage per hour based on the amount of time that you spend teaching, and research becomes like the thing that you love doing and you do most of, um, but you don't necessarily include it in that calculation. Whereas the reality is like what prepares you for being the great professor that you are is also all the additional work that you put in the research. And I feel that especially as we are junior scholars, and especially in graduate school and early on, even postdocs, when we are not more explicit about that, then we are perpetuating this idea that, like you do it for the love of it, to the point of burnout and complete breakdown. And so
Yeah,
I'm curious to hear your reaction to this, because I think that it is part of a conversation that is important for us to have.
yeah. So I agree. Now, I mean, I wanted to contextualize and like again, I don't want to complain about my job.
Hmm.
Like I don't think that I'm in any like I love because I guess because I love my job,
Yeah.
right? So I am going to so I'm going to push back to your pushback in a couple of things.
Hmm.
So I I think that the invisible sort of labor that many people have to do are precisely a consequence of this becoming a an industry, like a profit. Like it's about profit. It's about whatever the like management talks about, bums in seats, right? Being
Hmm.
on the black always, not running a deficit. Like I shouldn't know about this stuff, or maybe I should. I don't know, but like that shouldn't be the priority of how I behave,
Hmm.
right? So why do we need like so why do we need um mm, professors who only you know teach certain classes and do not have a full-time contract? Like why do we need certain faculty members that usually always look the same, who are doing all the invisible job? Like why do we need or job that is not rewarded or does not get you promoted? Why do we need this? Precisely because we are thinking of profit, and we're thinking about calculation, and we're thinking about saving, and we're thinking about how can we make this institution the most money or the least losses, when it shouldn't be that way. Maybe
Mhm.
it's too idealistic to think it about. I mean, to think about it that way, and it's never going to work. I'm just saying that that's the reality. So yeah. Now back to what you were saying. Yes, I mean, of course, when we think about, like, I'm not, like, I don't think I owe anything to the Western University.
Mhm.
Again, uh, I don't think that they're doing me a favor, right? So I think that I earn the wage
Yeah.
that I receive. Um, and yes, and yes, I think I was being a little bit too, it's a great job. But yes, there's a lot of invisible labor, and yes, I do work, like, sometimes ridiculous hours to do things that just happen to be the things that I love as well. Again, the research does not define my personality, so I can take it or leave it any day. I just really like to do it. But that is true. And in graduate school, I think that I definitely, again, because of the market, because
Mhm.
of this has become an industry, because you are competing. And again, so the other thing that I don't think it's mentioned enough is that when we say that the market is really bad, it's not only that there are few jobs, it's that most of those jobs are going to go to the same people. And when I say the same people, it's the same people that come from the same five institutions in the United States. So if you graduated from Harvard or MIT or Yale or Columbia or whatever, you're fine. Like, well, not that's not even true. If you happen to work with the correct advisor within these institutions, then
Mhm.
yes, you're fine. But if you come from university, again, as I call them, as actually it's not even my term, it's a colleague of mine who also graduated from Maryland, Dave
Mhm.
Armstrong, shout out to him, from a working class institution like ours, then you do have to put twice the work, right? You do need to, like, really burn out in like in graduate school, and it's not healthy. I am sure that I've lost years of my life writing my dissertation. Like, I it was not, I mean, I cannot, it cannot be healthy to close your eyes and, have the screen projected in your, like, in your
Mhm.
eyelids. That's
Yeah.
definitely, and but um and here's what's the catch 22, right? Because you either do that or have a work life balance. But if you have a work life balance, do you get a job? And I don't know, like, if somebody comes to me and asks, so what's your suggestion? Like, I don't know if I mean, I don't know if I feel comfortable giving either, as, like, either,
Mhm.
like, burn out and get a job, or do not
Yeah.
burn out and do not get a job. Like, I don't know what the right answer is. I don't know if, uh, yes, I don't know.
So
I mean, even worse now, right?
I I can tell you my perspective on this, and I think that, like, we could spend hours talking about this, because I think at the core of this there's a lot of the discussion around privilege, and like what that means, both like as you're getting into academia and also surviving and staying in academia. um my perspective on what you were sharing just now is that there is no right or wrong answer. However, and I think, like, that's what that for me is what fuels the pushback, not just in our conversation just now, but also like everything and anything that I do, is that I see the value of the work that we do as part of the academic enterprise as a whole. I also see how the systems can be set up in a way that are tremendously disempowering and harmful for our students and colleagues. And so a lot of the work that I do has to do with this idea of there has to be new ways of thinking about our career development that allow for those who really feel called to continuing moving forward in academia to do so, that allows for those who do not feel that way to explore other jobs and find ways of, connecting with the right opportunities, and that allows for an in between where, like, it is true, not everybody who has been in academia will stay in academia, not just because they might not want to, but maybe there are many of them who want and cannot stay because there are not enough opportunities there. But that we are having a conversation about who we are as workers within this discipline, as, like, as both scholars and professionals, that really understands our humanity as a whole rather than in terms of the, like bumps on seats, like we were just saying, and kind of like what's the bottom line and the P&L of any university, and at the same time that it's not idealizing the craft so much that then you get lost in that and you are vulnerable and exposed to people who take advantage of you as a result. And I think that that is a much larger conversation that we could have, but I think that it is important for us to, at the very least, like mention it explicitly, because otherwise, especially at a moment like this one, otherwise it feels like we are, you know not pointing out to the elephant in the room that I think that is happening not just in our discipline in political science, but across academia, especially in a year like this one where there feels like increasing pressures coming from all sides.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the humanities always end up with the short end of the stick of whatever, uh, changes in, or however the industry is developing. I agree with that. Well, I agree with what you were saying. To me, to me, the solution cannot only be, to have generous individuals within this institution, right? So, I've had very generous advisors. I've had very generous colleagues with their time, with their support, but that cannot be so. That's random,
Hmm.
right? It cannot be random. It has to be like structural. Okay?
And if I may also, I think like we are a perfect example of that. We had the same advisor and we have wildly different career
Yep.
trajectories.
So yeah, and it cannot, again, it cannot be like the mood of, you know of individuals that determines, um your success, or whatever you want to uh determine which is success. Again, success, I do think that's like a personal choice, but like what would you think is successful, but what your goals? So I do think that it needs to be structural changes, and I think that, not to get too preachy, but I do think that this only comes from organizing, and like reivindicating the positions of workers within these institutions, and with the most valuable thing that we have, which is, denying our labor. Uh, so I'm not encouraging anybody to go on strike or to unionize. Uh, but yes, like unionize and go on strikes. I don't know. I think that's like that's the only thing that the institutions care about anyway, right? So they care about their bottom line. One of the things that I love about Canada is that we are all unionized. My
Hmm.
students are unionized. I am unionized. We are always like negotiating, and like every so often we negotiate our contracts collectively, and we are always, threatening to go on a strike. And I think that's fine. Like I do not trust anybody in that institution except my union rep, right? And I think that's great. And when our grad students went on strike, we were there on solidarity, striking with them, not crossing the picket lines. And I think that's how it's supposed to be. Now, I that works in Canada. Canada is a very particular place. It's it's full of nice people that live up to the stereotype. Uh, if we once tried to unionize in the States, and it went from illegal to like probable cause for deportation. So, um, I can speak of these institutions that I guess are more, um, sort of conductive to this type of organizations, uh, which is a shame that you're not able to do that in the States.
So, moving back
Not to get
to
too Marxist Leninist here. No, I'm just kidding.
no, to move us back to, and also as we start wrapping up, to move us back to the bigger picture of, your trajectory, both throughout your academic career, but also across countries. Um, if you I'm going to ask you this question in a couple different ways, basically.
Yeah.
Looking back, is there anything that you would change knowing what you know now?
Mm, so, mm, hmm, so on the one hand,
Hmm.
because I am I am in a very good place, I would say no. Because all of the hardships and all of the mistakes uh, build up to where I am now. Without those hardships and mistakes, I wouldn't have learned, I wouldn't have grown, and I wouldn't have known how to navigate the system.
Hmm.
Now, if I was me with everything I know today starting, then I would just probably be at the same place anyway because I already know all the hardships and just avoid them. I think that hardships are important to growth, and I
Hmm.
think that being able to confront yourself, like your own limitations, what you're good at, I think that they're great. I do think that I would have so I think that this is a problem that we all have.
Hmm.
Uh, I might be generalizing, but I think that we all so people who go into academia are, for the most part, self-selected from people from students usually who just happen to be very good at school,
Hmm.
and they were always very bright students and smart students and got the good grades. And then you don't realize that you come to a place where everybody is a smart student who works really hard and has really good grades, and suddenly you're just and that hits you hard, and I think it hits harder some people than others. And I think that you know being more humble about where we come from,
Hmm.
who we are, and that makes it a lot easier to receive the feedback,
Yeah.
because academia is full of there's 90% of our life is failures. Like you get
Hmm.
rejections all the time, criticism all the time. So you have to really learn how to, discern what is good criticism, what is bad criticism. I think that would be one thing that I would change. Like, be better at discerning what's good criticism, bad criticism. Understand that, you don't know nothing, or
Hmm.
very little. The more that you know, that the less certain. I mean, I'm not the first person to say this, but the more you learn, the less certain you are about things because you
Yeah.
understand that every caveat. So I would say that, like, just be very like I would go back and say to myself, okay, just get down from that high horse.
Hmm.
You're not special. Everybody's special, so nobody is, right? Just
Hmm.
learn, be humble, be open to to accept criticism, to understand that there's a lot of things that you don't know, and yeah, work through it.
And my last question, also in the same line, is if you were to meet the person, like the version of yourself that got this journey started with that first Fulbright scholarship, um, what's one piece of practical advice that you would give them?
A piece of practical advice that I would give myself. Um, I think, yeah. So it's very similar to what I would say before, which is don't be so full of yourself. Like,
Hmm.
um, you have this very unique opportunity to be surrounded by very smart people that are doing very interesting things. Um, don't waste your time criticizing everything. Like, take advantage uh, of that time by like taking the good out of all the things that other people are saying, and see how you can build on it, try rather than being overly critical of everything. I think that, I don't know, I felt that maybe it's just the way that we were taught as well, but we had to be overly critical. Like, we had to find the problem with everything.
Mm-hmm.
What are the limitations? What are the gaps? Rather than how can you build upon this? I mean, this is good, and maybe you do not completely agree, but with what you agree, like, how do you build on this? I think that
Yeah.
those exercises were not there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Yeah.
what I would say in terms of how to tackle graduate school. Um, Life as a graduate student, I would say, like, learn the law, uh,
Mm-hmm.
do a budget, don't wing it,
Mm-hmm.
and understand that there is a fundamental problem between the people who are in your country and the people who are in the country that's going to host you, about understanding the life of an international student. The people
Mm-hmm.
who are in your country know the laws but do not know what you know it is to actually live there necessarily, or now at this moment, right? Maybe they knew in the past, but things change, so they don't know. And the people who are in the country that they're hosting you, let's say the US, they don't really know. Like, so many people have asked my wife, but why don't you just get a new work permit and come to the US? What do you mean, why don't, like, oh, I was just waiting for you to suggest that, right? Like, Analia, why don't you get your permanent resident? You've been here, like, you've been living in the States for so long. You're like, oh, thank you. I haven't thought about it, right? So there's a so you need to bridge that gap between what people what people know in the US, for example, about US and
Mm-hmm.
not about international law, and what people in your own country maybe know about international law but don't necessarily know about the US.
Mm-hmm.
And then find a network of people that are in the same situation that you, and support yourselves. Um because otherwise, like, doing it by yourselves is almost impossible, I
Mm-hmm.
would say. And if it's possible, then it's very lonely.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sebastian. Uh,
Thank you.
it's been a pleasure, and I am certain that we will continue having this conversation off the record as well. But thank you for your time today.
No, thank you for inviting me, and good luck.
Thank you. Bye. That is the end of today's episode. And as a thank you for making it this far, here is a special gift. You can use code LUCKY26 to get 20% off when you subscribe to my coaching membership, AGV Lab for Career Explorers. You can book your call to join it using the link in the show notes. Thank you for listening to Lucky to Be Here. I am your host, Dr. Analia Gomez Vidal. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening and leave us your review. You can also get our updates and resources for career development by subscribing to our weekly newsletter visiting agvservicesllc.com. See you next time.